can we talk a little bit about med school personal statement? By the way, this could be applied to personal statement, essays, secondary, primary, tertiary, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter. You still have to have a good format. You have to, people have to make sense of what you're saying. And again, it's got to do a lot of the things we talked about, which is show me the evidence. So let's see if Meng, you want to take this.
Absolutely. So we've said this before, but make sure you actually follow the instructions. So for example, you should really know the length limit of the essays that you're writing. Don't go over the limit. If they have a recommended structure or suggested content, make sure you do follow those guidelines and that you're not missing any of that.
In case you've never seen any of our past events, my name is Beruz Momeni. I'm the CEO and founder here at BeMo, and I have several of our admission experts here today that I'd like to introduce. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Ranza, who is our Associate Director of Consulting and one of our lead admission experts. I'd like to introduce you to Meng, who is our Manager of Consulting Department. And next, it's Ashley, who is our lead coach. Actually, Ashley is involved in training a lot of our admission experts, coaching them, and continuously improving our services.
The second thing is that you do want to use your personal experiences as evidence for any claims that you're making in your essay. You don't want to just have a list of claims. You have to have experiences that support those. You also need to be original. So, the way you write your essay is really going to help you to do this. It's not so much about having experiences that nobody else had, because that's not going to happen. Most medical students have quite similar experiences that back up their claims, but it's your ability to zero in on a specific example from your experience, your ability to draw out what you learned from that experience. Those are the types of things that will make your essay original. The fourth thing is that you want to have excellent structure, flow, grammar, spelling. We've talked about this over and over again because it is so important in order for you to not just be part of the reject pile. And then number 5 is that you should answer all the questions being asked. I can't tell you how many times I've read an essay, I read the question prompt, and then I read the essay, and then at the end of it, I'm like, did you answer the question? The answer is no. Okay, so don't make this mistake. It's very easy to digress and move on to a different point, but you do want to, after you write the thing, go back and look at the question and ask yourself, did I even answer this question? And if you didn't, go back to the drawing board, make an outline so that you know exactly what points you're going to include to actually answer the questions. Now, the 6th thing is that you should include a captivating opening and closing sentence in your essay, whether it's a personal statement or just a short school-specific essay, it doesn't matter. The opening and the closing sentences have to be have to grab the reader's attention, and that's because of psychological effects that we know as the recency and primacy effects. Basically, what this means is that the first and last point of your interaction, or the reader's interaction with your piece of writing, those are the points that are going to stick out in their memories. Right? Those are the points that they're going to remember. So you do want to make an extra effort to make those quite excellent. And the last thing is that you want to leave the reader wanting more. If you have a great opening, if you have a great closing, if you've answered the question, the reader is going to be more likely to want to get to know you as an applicant. And guess what that leads to? An invitation to interview, right? And that's what you want out of your application. Yeah. So how do we do it? Let's talk about some fundamentals. Definitely start early. This is something we emphasize no matter what you're working on, what you're preparing for, and definitely is true for any written documents that you're preparing. During this process, definitely brainstorm ideas. Before you start writing, you need to come up with the strong ideas to incorporate and the experiences to include. So this can take a lot of time. Don't underestimate how long it could take for you to brainstorm ideas. So you really need to give yourself the space to think and reflect. I have worked with a lot of students who second guess, who look down on their own experiences and their own competencies. And this step of brainstorming ideas, and also number 3, as we get there, of speaking to others who are qualified to help you generate these ideas, Bruce, if you could put that on the screen. These two things, that will help you to get more clarity about exactly what experiences you have that would be valuable to a medical school, and what competencies you do have and that you have, what skills have you learned from these experiences that they're going to value, right? So in this process, this is a key point at which you can answer this question of like, first of all, do I even really want to apply to medical school? And what experiences do I have and what competencies do I have that I can include in my application?
A lot of people are like, oh, I don't have these fancy experiences. Well, first of all, you don't need to have fancy experiences.
No.
It's about figuring out how whatever you have, that's how you become original, is related to one of those core competencies and tell that story. That's what you, it was like, oh, but I only worked at McDonald's. So how can you explain that that taught you to be conscientious, responsible, a leader, service to others? You can actually, like we've worked with people who just got ordinary experiences. Most of you do, it's cool. It's about how you communicate that and tell your story.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I usually recommend, of course, the brainstorming process. We want to think about what do I want to include and what's the point of me talking about this experience. And at first, I usually say don't worry about the character count too much and kind of get your ideas out on paper or you're typing them, even starting with bullet points, and then we can turn them into sentences. Then we can narrow it down and try to kind of see what's really important and what can I actually fit into that character count. But you also want to look at your entire application. Let's say you have 15 experiences that you're highlighting, and you want to try to avoid redundancy between those different experiences. So maybe you do write the version of the description for that experience and it's too long. And then you realize, okay, well, this sentence about let's say leadership, I'm actually highlighting leadership in a different experience. So maybe I'm going to focus on something else here. So you want to think about your character count for that one experience and overall, how much room do I really have to work with for all of the experiences that I'm representing in my application.
And to add to that, be very picky with the words that you select. Starting off and with initiated, using those like key like action words and verb words that just like really just target exactly what it is. Interacted, again, it all pertains to what the experience is, but that's how you could eliminate some of those other filler words that aren't as necessary to explain.
Right.
Very good. We are running a little bit behind in time, so we're gonna move a little bit faster, but we want to give you a couple of examples of personal statement. I think these are all pretty straightforward, and some of the tips maybe we could go through it is, again, I want to put everything here, is remember what this test is all about, what you need to have from beginning to an intro body to the end, and remember why they're asking you to do this, to figure out what your motivations are. Do you have the qualities? And one of the tips that we normally give for a standard personal statement is we say, can you craft something that focuses maybe on 1, 2, max 3? I actually prefer a personal statement that focuses on one story, one main thing that you want to tell us, because you have a list of activities. And tell us in a chronological order. Why? Because the human brain loves order. If you start with like, I'm gonna first tell you about 2025, and then I'm gonna go back to 1987, and then like brain it's just not good. You have to go in some sort of order. What motivated you? What did you do to learn more? What satisfied this decision? And can you do that in the context of an experience? Those are always the best personal statements, rather than literally saying, this is what motivated me. So when we give you tips, guys, we don't mean you should do these things literally. It should be conveyed in your personal statement or essay. Meng or Ashley, whoever wants to go, maybe give us the intro. And, we talked about the importance of recency, why it's important, but maybe we'll go through an example and maybe we could dissect why this is a good intro.
Absolutely, I can do that. Like with all our other examples, I'll just start by reading this one. Thank you were the first words Ella said when she walked into our clinic in West Africa. They were the last words she said as she left. Bearing witness to countless patients who were grateful to receive basic care made me see the necessity of a physician's work and commissioned me to be a part of it. Although the pathway to medicine was not always clear to me, my experience prior to volunteering in Africa, such as overcoming familial challenges and my work with nonprofit organizations, have prepared me to serve as an advocate and leader in my community, and I look forward to growing these passions through the work of a physician. So what makes this introduction strong is, first of all, to start with the first sentence, because we've been talking about that, it draws us into a moment in this person's experience. And I think that really helps us to kind of gravitate towards this moment and draws us into the personal statement as a whole. The student then goes ahead and makes a connection to medicine. And something important that they did at the end was introduce the experiences that they will eventually elaborate on in the following paragraphs. So it kind of gives you a roadmap about what to expect in later paragraphs. And actually, I think we'll go over maybe the first one of these.
Let's just do the first body paragraph. And, you know, quickly, if I could go through, the idea is to elaborate on what you said in the intro. You get a roadmap. Now is the time to explain. So here's how you write a really good essay in any context, medicine or not. You tell your readers what's about to come. Then you tell them what you were going to tell them. Then you end by telling them what you've just told them. So essentially, you've probably heard that in different contexts. And it's literally, that's how you do it. Again, brain loves some order. And your reader, you know, admission officer, they're going to operate the same way.
Okay, so we're going to read through this example. This is the student's first body paragraph that goes with that introduction that we just looked at, and we'll kind of look at it in pieces here and talk about what the student is doing well. So they wrote, as I grew up in an immigrant family that experienced financial struggles, becoming a doctor was a far-fetched notion. However, experiencing our struggles helped me to appreciate the need for better access and diversity of care. As the eldest of 4 children, I was the English translator for all medical appointments. I had to learn about taxes before I graduated from high school, and I became the primary caregiver to my siblings by senior year. I recall vividly the night when our home was broken into and we had to call the police. That was a particularly uncomfortable situation for my parents, who had only negative experiences with the police in our home country. So let's kind of look so far at what the student has here in this paragraph, and looking at the beginning of the paragraph. Instead of just a standalone statement that the student has an appreciation for better access to care, the student is telling a specific story here and providing the context for how they developed this appreciation, which is more convincing to the reader. So like we said, anyone can say they have certain skills or certain interests, but you need to really back that up with evidence and demonstrate that to the reader. So we mentioned we call this show, don't tell, and this is a very effective writing strategy. It's also just more interesting as well for the reader to include these personal stories because you're keeping them engaged. It's more like reading a good book, right? Rather than reading through a scientific research paper that's kind of boring, right? So when they include that brief personal story about their home being broken into, it is keeping the reader engaged, and it's letting the admissions committee hear your actual story. They do want to figure out, who are you as a person, right? How are you standing out from all the other applicants, and why are you a good fit for their program? So after this part where they give the example of their home being broken into, the student is going to start talking about certain skills and kind of what they took away from the experience. So they said, I was able to stay calm while explaining the situation to the police officer, then translating what he said to my parents. In the end, the officer commended me for the level of maturity I demonstrated in such a stressful situation. So here the students highlighting specific skills of staying calm in a stressful situation and the maturity, and they provided evidence in the paragraph to actually demonstrate this to the admissions committee. So they're actually going to be convinced that you have these skills and that you can bring them with you to medical school, because again, they're looking for students that have these different competencies. And then to end the paragraph, you don't want to end abruptly. You want to make sure you have some sort of kind of brief conclusion at the end of each body paragraph. The student wrote, "This early responsibility would eventually fuel my desire to advocate for those who are unable to advocate for themselves." So the student's talking about what they've taken away from this experience, and they're talking about advocacy. And this advocacy is an important aspect to a lot of, to medicine, to a lot of medical schools. You might see it in their mission statements. And so if you can, if you have a school that you're interested in, if you can kind of align yourself with aspects of their mission statement, that can be helpful to, again, show that you're a good fit for that program. They are trying to assess whether you might be a good fit, and again, how you stand out from other students. So this is an effective way to wrap up this first body paragraph, showing what the student took away from the experience and how it makes them a good fit for medical school.
The conclusion, of course, is not supposed to be just a simple summary. It should be something that's going to make the reader wanting more. Remember, people remember the first piece of information last. So intro, conclusion are even more important than the body.